Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. More high-profile crimes apparently committed by illegal immigrants in this country. Tonight, we're going to bring you a horrifying story of a gang member deported 4 times, accused of sexually assaulting a child and stabbing 2 women. Also, the political aftermath from the failure of the Republicans' Obamacare repeal. That happened today, as you doubtless know. We'll tell you what it means. But first, the question over whether the Obama administration spied on the Trump campaign remains unanswered. 2 days ago, House Intel Chair Devin Nunes said there was strong evidence of surveillance. Now he says he's unsure, partly because the FBI is not releasing relevant documents for some reason. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer had this to say about it today.
Well, I think that there has been an acknowledgement that that there are documents out there showing that people were surveilled or monitored to some degree.
They could have exclusively been foreigners, Devin Nunes concedes.
Devin Nunes also made it clear that he's going to have a hearing later next week with several members of the intelligence community and calling them others back. And so let's wait and see what
is the president vindicated by.
The president said he felt somewhat vindicated because I think that there is an acknowledgement that that as we proceed down this discussion, it continues to show that there was something there.
Richard Goodstein is a Democratic strategist. He's been in Washington a long time, and he knows how government works. He joins us live tonight.
For better or worse.
For better or worse. In this case, perhaps worse, Richard. I think that people are missing the big story here, both sides. So Democrats are going on about Vladimir Putin, the puppet master. Republicans are talking a lot about leaks. Both may be missing the actual scandal, which is the political use of classified intelligence to hurt people. And you're seeing it happen. You've seen it happen here before. Explain to me, as someone who's watched government a long time, why Democrats and Republicans on the Oversight Committee cannot get relevant documents from the FBI, which they're supposed to be overseeing. What's the possible explanation for that?
You'll have to ask them. I don't really know what the security clearances are. One can't help but be struck, however. Let's look at the Comey hearing, if we can, for a second. I was politically active during Watergate. And if Watergate happened today, Howard Baker, who said, what did the president know and when did he know it, if he was Devin Nunes, Howard Baker would be huddling with Richard Nixon behind Sam Ervin's back. And instead of asking Haldeman and Ehrlichman and Mitchell, what did the president know, he'd be like, who was Deep Throat? Right? And I think that's perverted. We're really not looking to get to the bottom of what happened here.
No, I think what you're missing is that the real scandal is not what those who are elected do, because we can throw them out of office. We have control over their careers. It's what people who are unelected and who retain massive amounts of power do to influence the course of government behind a screen we can't see beyond. That is to say, the permanent government. I'm not a conspiracy nut, but I'm watching this and I'm asking myself, is it really crazy to think that the Obama administration, agencies overseen by the Obama White House, were spying on the Trump campaign? Apparently they were. So why is that not something I should worry about? And by the way, it could be the Hillary campaign. I don't care. Yeah. You shouldn't be spying on your political opponents.
I'm not quite sure when you say apparently. Is this apparently with that whole litany of things that Sean Spicer cited that was frankly a bit addled, that were all these news?
No, I'm saying when the director of the FBI, James Comey, says that in congressional testimony under oath. Yes, they were the subject of an investigation during the campaign.
What he said, I think, was that people in the Trump campaign got caught up in the investigation. And
he said that they were the subject of an investigation.
So let's imagine that Paul Manafort, who we know is paid $10 million a year or so by Putin compatriots, that somehow or other he crossed the line in that connection. I mean, look, we know that the WikiLeaks came out an hour after Access Hollywood, right? Do we think that was just random? Do we think that was just dumb luck? Or do we think when Roger Stone said it's Podesta's time in the barrel, that was just a kind of coincidence?
Look, so you're not going to get me to say the Russian government wishes us well or they're not causing mischief. They have for almost 100 years against our government, of course. But let's not forget that we're not talking about the Russian government, a foreign government. We're talking about our own government authorizing a spying operation against its political opponents. That was at the very heart of the allegations of Watergate. Yes, it is. We know that happened.
Well, nobody's saying that. No, Comey is saying, first of all, it doesn't trace a whit to Barack Obama. I mean, I do hear you, Tucker, and I think you know better, defending Donald Trump's untethered from reality tweets.
Not only have I not defended it, as I put out night after night, I questioned directly about it, and I don't think that he should have written that.
To
tweet.
your credit.
I've just been here long enough to know that it's a plausible claim, wiretapping, whatever. Yeah. It's a plausible claim that Trump and his associates were under surveillance by agencies overseen by the Obama White House. I believe that is entirely plausible. Do you not think that's plausible?
Well,
and I think it's a big deal.
Well, when you say overseen by the Obama White House, let's say
they're part of the Obama administration. That's the executive branch of government.
So you could make that charge about the FBI going after Hillary Clinton, right? In the same way.
Yes, you could.
Exactly. So, and I'm saying that we don't know, what the direct kind of relationship is between the FBI and what they see as their responsibility about disclosing information. They are now entitled to be suspect about sharing things with Donald Trump.
But we do know that the intelligence agencies, CIA particularly, are in effect acting like their own government. They're unelected. On February 16, 2017, the Wall Street Journal reported, and no one's refuted it, that the CIA was withholding information for Trump. Their whole job is to give him information, the information he asked for. They're withholding because they just don't think he should have it. Does that bother you?
Well, if you were the subject, if you had information and you were an investigator or you were at a government intelligence agency and the person you were responsible to give information to, you thought was actually going to mishandle it. I'm just saying, I understand.
Not your job to make that judgment.
Well,
so,
I don't know. If you think national security is at stake, if you think...
Then you resign, because we have civilian control of the intelligence agencies. If some army colonel decided we should invade Liechtenstein and he felt it was his moral duty, would he be allowed to do that? No. He works for the president.
Right.
On March 14th, John Brennan assured Congress the CIA did not hack into the Senate Intelligence Committee's computers. Turns out, we learned July 31st of the same year, he was lying. They actually broke in to the Senate Intel Committee computers because they didn't like what the Senate Intel Committee was doing. Right. Are you bothered by that?
I'm bothered by leaks. I'm bothered.
That's not a leak. No, that's espionage against elected officials.
I'm bothered by intelligence agencies misusing their authority, of course. I am bothered profoundly by the misdirection of looking at leaks and what the intelligence agencies may or may not be doing correctly when the story is, again, possibly collusion between Trump associates and Russia, the equivalent of having Russia bomb the Clinton headquarters every day. But it wasn't kinetic, it was technological.
Look, that's a grotesque overstatement, but I'm going to let it go by because, look, we're talking about a political game. I'm not defending that. I'm merely saying here you have the most powerful and well-funded government in the history of the world, and its most secretive elements may be using that information for political reasons. In March of 2013, James Clapper went before the Congress and said, we're not collecting information wholesale on Americans. He lied. Nobody seemed to care.
And I'm saying,
doesn't that bother you?
To say to use it for political reasons, they didn't do a very good job considering they went public with the investigation of Hillary. They did not disclose this about Trump, and had they, one could argue that would have been the equivalent of the Comey letter as regards Trump and made the difference in terms of the campaign.
Well, we may be arguing the same thing. I thought that Comey's announcement that Hillary was under investigation without specifying what she was being investigated for was appalling.
Absolutely.
And he ought to be fired for that. I thought that at the time, and I think it now. But you guys are making this purely partisan when there's something much more important at stake, which is the integrity of our government.
Well, I don't disagree that we need to get to the bottom, get the intelligence agencies not acting like they're their own boss.
Oh, gosh. We agree on that. Mr. Goodstein, thank you. The NSA, for more than 30 years, he was a famous and highly regarded employee there, but he resigned in 2001, saying the agency was building illegal mass surveillance networks. He says that President Trump almost certainly has been spied on by the government, was being spied on, and probably for a long time. Bill Binney joins us now. Bill, thanks a lot for coming on. Now, you, as I just said in my intro, you spent 30 years there. You're not someone who's speculating, and you believe it's entirely possible that the president was, in fact, spied on?
Yes, in fact, they're taking in fundamentally the entire fiber network inside the United States and collecting all that data and storing it in a program for they call it Stellar Wind is the name for their program. That's the domestic collection of data on U.S. citizens to other U.S. citizens, everything we're doing. Phone calls, emails, and then financial transactions, credit cards, things like that, yeah, all of it.
So if you found someone objectionable or dangerous, the temptation would be profound to locate information on that person and perhaps misuse it, would it not be?
Yes, in fact, for example, inside NSA, they had a program they called LoveInt. That's where the analysts in NSA looked into that data to find out if their lovers were cheating on them. That's the extent of the data collection that NSA is doing.
But I mean, I grew up believing that NSA was not allowed to collect data on Americans. It was supposed to be outwardly focused on our foreign enemies. And you're saying that that's been perverted for many years.
Yes, since 2001.
So what do you make of considering what you just said is that the NSA has all the information? So presumably they could prove or disprove the claims about Russian tampering in this election. They could prove or disprove Trump's tweet about being spied upon. Why wouldn't they?
Well, that would get into the extent of which they've penetrated the network inside the United States. There's another program going on here that not too many people are talking about. They're not even addressing. I think you were trying to get at it with your previous guest. Inside NSA, there's a set of people who are, and we got this from another NSA whistleblower who witnessed some of this. They're inside there, they're targeting and looking at all the members of the Supreme Court, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Congress, both House and Senate, as well as the White House. And all of this data is there inside NSA in a small group where they're looking at it. And the idea is to see what people that have power over you are going to, what they think you should be doing, or what they're planning to do to you, your budget, or whatever, so you can try to counteract it before it actually happens.
I mean, that's just East German. And by the way, that's got to be illegal.
Yeah.
I do not believe that is legal. The oversight committees...
No, it isn't. No,
right,
it's a
are
violation.
supposed to be preventing that stuff. And I remember having a conversation with the former Republican chairman of the Oversight Committee, Mike Rogers, and saying this is a big deal, and getting an answer, in effect, well, terrorism. That doesn't sound like this has anything to do with terrorism.
No, this bulk acquisition, by the way, is inhibiting their ability to detect terrorist threats in advance, so they can't stop them. So people get killed as a result, which means, they pick up the pieces and clean up the blood after the attack. That's what's been going on. I mean, they've consistently failed. When Alexander said they'd stop 54 attacks, and he was challenged to produce the evidence to prove that, he failed on every count.
So, but the NSA is not, this is my last question, and it's an obvious one, the NSA is not its own country. So if the President of the United States, for whom they work, to whom they report, says, look, I want everything you have on X, aren't they required to give it to him?
Yes, but again, he'll never know if they do, because they don't necessarily have to do that internally. You see, you had Nunes and others saying that they never really got to see the raw data. So it's a question of whether or not they pull out the raw data and give him that data or any reports generated off that. They don't have to, and they've been lying to them consistently for a very long time.
This is a shocking interview. I appreciate it, Bill. It's hard to believe we're putting up with this. Thank you for shedding some light.
Well, it's like the Praetorian Guard. They're going to determine what the emperor does and who the emperor is.
That was the analogy that came to mind. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Well, if you live in modern America, you know the rules by now. We're all supposed to follow the law unless it's immigration law or any other policy the anointed leaders of the left happen to dislike. According to the Department of Homeland Security, from January 28th through February 3rd, 206 criminally charged illegal aliens were released nationwide by law enforcement, despite hold requests placed on them by ICE. Of those 206 released aliens, 142 were released by a single sheriff. Her name is Sally Hernandez, and she's in Travis County, Texas, where Austin, the state capital, is. The released aliens face charges that include sexual assault, robbery, and domestic violence. It's a very frustrating situation for the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott. He's trying to ban sanctuary cities right now, and he joins us in the studio. Governor, it's great to see you.
You too, Tucker.
So explain am I explaining this right? That the sheriff, the elected sheriff, whose job it is to uphold the law, enforce the law, is in fact ignoring the law in Travis County, Texas. Is that true?
It's exactly right. It's posing great danger because she has knowingly released from jail in Travis County people who've been either convicted of or accused of serious felonies such as sexual assault of a minor. She's put right back out onto the streets. This is a dangerous practice that Texas is going to hammer down. We will not tolerate this. And so we have taken action. We're going to take even stiffer action to prohibit and ban sanctuary cities in Texas.
This is Sheriff Sally Hernandez, known as Sanctuary Sally.
Sanctuary Sally.
What's the motivation here? Why would a sheriff want to release dangerous people back to the community?
Tucker, this is a part of what you've seen sweep across the United States of America. There is a liberal agenda that wants to so-called be welcoming to those who are here illegally, and one way they do that is by not enforcing the law. She campaigned on and got elected as sheriff in Travis County this last year on the promise she would not enforce sanctuary city laws, or she would not enforce ICE detainers. And so she campaigned on the promise of not enforcing the law. That's not the way things are done in the state of Texas. No. And we are going to require that she, as well as all counties, all cities in the state of Texas, must follow the law. If you want to be in law enforcement, you have to enforce the law.
Why do they never do this with like tax evasion or seatbelt laws or something I might benefit from?
Because it doesn't fit within the paradigm of the liberal ideology.
So what can you do about this?
Well, one thing that I have already done unilaterally as governor of the state of Texas is I defunded Travis County from governor grants that were going to them to the tune of $1.5 million I took out of their pocket. Second is we're working on a piece of legislation that will impose criminal penalties where the sheriff herself can wind up behind bars and hence be removed from office, fines that could add up to millions of dollars per year, as well as other penalties. We're going to make it so costly, so expensive, there's no way that any city or county can take on sanctuary city policies.
But there also are torts involved here. So if I give you my gun and to say, hey, here's a gun, and you go rob a liquor store and shoot someone with it, I can be sued, and certainly in civil court, for that. Why wouldn't she be personally liable for the crimes committed by the criminals she released?
That is one of the proposals that has been discussed. It could wind up in this final piece of legislation where either the sheriff or the public official personally could be subject to liability, or the governmental body, whether it be the city or county, could be subject to liability for paying for those who are injured. Take the famous case of Kate Steinle. Why shouldn't Kate Steinle's family be able to sue San Francisco or the county that San Francisco was in because of the loss of their child? I believe that claim should be viable against any official or any governmental body that allows sanctuary city policies.
Have you told the trial lawyers this? I mean, they're pursuing everybody because they profit from them. Why wouldn't they be in favor of this?
Because of their liberal agenda. Ironically, the trial lawyers did not pick this up and view it as a new avenue to make money. And so they have not blessed it. They're not supporting it. Wow. Ironically, which shows is nothing more than a liberal agenda idea.
Boy, nothing is more important than illegal immigration to these people. Governor, thanks a lot for joining us. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Well, the Republican Party's Obamacare repeal died a fairly pathetic death today, with the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, withdrawing it after the bill failed to collect enough Republican support to pass. For more on what happened today in the aftermath, we are joined by Fox News' Trace Gallagher. Hey, Trace.
Hey, Tucker, Republicans knew going into the day that passing the bill would be a long shot, but it did not stop Vice President Mike Pence from making one more trip to the Hill to see if he could twist a few Freedom Caucus members' arms, though some said it was more like strong-arming. Congressman Thomas Massie tweeted, quote, "If exec branch tells legislative branch when to vote, how to vote, and what it will be allowed to work on if vote fails, is that a republic?" Then about 30 minutes before the scheduled 3:30 vote, House Speaker Paul Ryan went to the White House to inform the president the numbers didn't add up. Ryan says he recommended pulling the legislation, and the president agreed. Here's both.
We did not have quite the votes to replace this law. And so, yeah, we're going to be living with Obamacare for the foreseeable future.
I've been saying for the last year and a half that the best thing we can do, politically speaking, is let Obamacare explode. It is exploding right now.
And while the GOP as a whole began licking its wounds, Freedom Caucus member Mo Brooks was, quote, pleased as can be the bill didn't pass. His sentiments were echoed by Democrats. Listen.
Today is a great day for our country. It's a victory. What happened on the floor is a victory for the American people, for our seniors, for people with disabilities, for our children.
Hillary Clinton also chimed in, releasing a statement saying it's a victory for anyone who believes affordable health care is a human right. One GOP congressman told Fox News roughly 200 GOP House members supported the bill, which means they were roughly 16 votes short. Tucker.
Thanks a lot, Trace. Well, up next, a New York police commissioner says it's the worst crime he has seen in 28 years on the job. That commissioner will be here with details about the illegal immigrant arrested for sexually assaulting a very small child. Stay tuned. Plenty here on the dreadful rape case in Rockville, Maryland, but that's hardly the only shocking crime allegedly committed recently by an illegal immigrant. Check out this case in Long Island, New York. Tommy Vladim Alvarado Ventura is from El Salvador. He's a member of the MS-13 gang. He's been deported 4 times out of the country, each time after being arrested for a crime. That did not stop him from easily returning each time to his stomping grounds in New York, and now he's under arrest for allegedly sexually assaulting a 2-year-old and stabbing 2 women. For more information tonight, we are joined by Nassau County Police Commissioner Thomas Crumpter. Commissioner, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker. It's nice to be here tonight.
Obviously it's tragic, but it's also hard to believe this could have happened. The man was deported 4 times, 2,000 miles away from Nassau County. How do you think he got back?
You know, it's obviously a significant problem when over a 5-year period of time, this individual was arrested multiple times and deported 4 separate occasions, that he was even here to commit this very evil act. Is this something that you've seen before? You know, we are seeing it, and unfortunately, we are, just 2 weeks ago, we were involved in a case with the Eastern District of New York, where 2 young girls were killed in Brentwood, Long Island, and a significant number of the subjects, all MS-13 gang members, were all undocumented aliens. So it's not your job to enforce the borders. It's very far from your job, and you seem to be dealing with the consequences of not doing it. Do you wish you had some help from the federal government here? You know, it's obviously, we believe the federal government's become more aggressive in dealing with these criminals that are undocumented aliens. And that's what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here tonight is an individual that created a situation where a 2-year-old will have to live with significant emotional and physical injuries for the rest of her life. And it's unfortunate that he was even here to commit this, heinous, horrific act. Yeah, I mean, it should have been preventable in that sense. Now, there's a lot of politics around this, and I know you're serving in law enforcement. I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable situation. But will you concede that immigration policy does play a role in this crime and crimes like it? You know, it's absolutely the policy. In Nassau County, our position is that we will provide assistance. We will abide by those administrative detainers at the request of ICE, and we will hold those people for the allotted 48 hours in Nassau County. That is what we're there. Obviously, trust is a top concern of the Nassau County Police Department, and every day we focus on improving that trust. We won't, ask the immigration status of anyone that is a victim or a witness to a crime, but these are criminals that we really do have to focus on. So there's a pretty large city nearby with about 8 million people right near you that doesn't have those policies. Does that make your life harder? I'm not going to speak to the New York City policies. What I will tell you is, we take an oath of office that will enforce the laws of this country, and that's the rules that we play by in Nassau County. If you run for mayor of New York City, call me. I'll send you a donation. Thank you very much. In Rockville, we've been covering all week. It is just maybe time for us to overhaul our approach to legal immigration. That's the question. We're joined now by New York immigration attorney Cyrus Maida. Cyrus, thanks a lot for coming on. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. So no honest person describes all immigrants as bad people. A lot of them are great people. Some of my favorite people actually are immigrants. But by the same token, no honest person denies that some people come to this country for the wrong reasons and do horrible things when they're here. Isn't it lying to pretend that all immigrants are more impressive than native-born Americans, which is the claim?
Tucker, crime is committed in all societies. It's committed by a few immigrants, but it's also committed by Americans. Yes. And when people commit crimes, law enforcement takes care of it, and the criminal justice system has to deal with it. But to blame all immigrants for the crimes of a few is not becoming of America as a country of immigrants. We are focusing on few immigrants who commit crimes, and of course my heart bleeds for the victims of these crimes. But on the other hand, we have millions of immigrants that benefit the United States, and we have to focus on that rather than just focusing on
so that's your determination,
immigrants.
So I guess you're in charge of what we focus on now. I mean, look, here's the point, here's the difference, and I agree with you, as I said at the outset, I'm not blaming all immigrants for the crimes of a few. I'm merely saying that if someone's here illegally, the crime is by definition preventable. It would have been prevented if he hadn't been here, and he shouldn't be here, and he should have been deported, and he should have been kept out of the country by definition. So it didn't need to happen. That's why it's a different level of frustration when we see crimes like that. Do you understand?
I do understand what you're saying, but on the other hand, there are lots of undocumented immigrants who are trying to get legal status in our immigration system that needs an upgrade. And we don't need to be deporting all undocumented immigrants. Some of them have a basis to remain here, or they could become legal if they marry a U.S. citizen or the laws change. So to have this mindset of trying to deport all undocumented immigrants because they're likely to commit crimes is again unworthy and unbecoming of who we are as Americans.
But and thanks for the lecture on who we are, but I don't think that anyone is suggesting deporting all illegal immigrants, even this administration, as you know, since you've been following it. And I don't think, again, anyone's saying they're all criminals. But by the same token, people like you pretend as if all people here from other countries are more virtuous than Americans. Look at the statistics. These are real. So the DEA has wanted lists for drug fugitives. 83% of them are foreign-born. In these cities, Seattle, New York, Philadelphia, Dallas, and New Jersey, jurisdiction of New Jersey, there are no American-born fugitives on the list, not one. They're all immigrants.
I'm not sure about these statistics, Tucker, but there are studies that go the other way.
They're from the DEA website today.
That immigrants have less proclivity to commit crimes, and generally that has been the case by other studies. So you may be citing a set of studies, but there are others.
Hold on. Let's get our social science right. I'm not denying that. I don't know if it's true or not, but it makes sense. I think a lot of immigrants just kind of want to do their work and be left alone. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But
so most of them, and let's focus on those immigrants.
And I think we do, and we celebrate them.
Yes, and
but there are also many others whose existence we deny, and for whom you are making excuses right now, who cause an awful lot of trouble. And so why would we put up with that for a second? Why would we say, come to our country the second you commit a crime? Well,
I'm not making excuses for immigrants.
You're saying don't focus on them.
Yeah, let me just talk. Let the criminal justice system deal with immigrants who commit crimes, and let's reform our immigration system so we can have pathways, sensible pathways for people to legalize here and contribute to the United States and its economy. And that's what we need to be focusing on, rather than the few people who commit crimes.
So here's something you tweeted February 28th, and I don't want to pull it out of random. It's not a gotcha show, but I just thought it was an interesting point. You said, "Buy American and hire American lacks 21st century vision. Global independence brings jobs and prosperity to all."
I'm glad I tweeted that, and I'm glad you're quoting it today.
But is it true? And I know that's a very, all the McKinsey consultants think that, and all the, a lot of people in your world think that. But has the American middle class become more prosperous in the last 20 years at a time of record immigration and globalization? Has it? Do you know?
Tucker, our economy has done better in the last few years because we are interdependent with other countries. And in the 21st, yes, and in the 21st century, we have to share technologies and skills and become prosperous.
Hold on, there are a lot of upsides, and I would never deny that.
Yeah, you agree that there are upsides.
A lot of innovative people have moved
and the upsides outweigh the downsides.
No, but you said, and I'm quoting you now, brings jobs and prosperity to all. And my question is, people making under $50,000 in this country, the middle class, are they better off now than they were 20 years ago, or not? Do you know?
They may have been, but you don't, again, blame immigrants and globalization. There are other forces, and we're in this state of transition. And immigration, if we have interdependence and immigration, we will ultimately become more prosperous.
Okay. Well, a lot of us are waiting for that, and I want to believe what you're saying, but the evidence suggests you're completely wrong.
I'm working towards that too by trying to promote immigration to the United States.
Okay.
I want to have more Googles in the United States.
Right. Well, don't we all?
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor, thanks a lot for joining us.
I'm glad you agree on that.
Jack R. Smith. In those emails, Dr. Jack R. Smith told parents that if they didn't want illegal immigrants coming to their schools and possibly raping ninth graders, then they were racist and he would call the police on them. Well, here's some more information on Dr. Jack R. Smith. For his inspired leadership, Montgomery County has given him quite a contract. Smith gets a base pay of $275,000 per year, which can only go up every year, but unlike the rest of the American economy, can never go down. It's a nice trick. In addition, he gets $40 grand deposited in a retirement fund each year. So far, that's more than 10 times the median individual income in this country. We just checked. But Smith's contract does not stop there. It gets better. Dr. Jack R. Smith also gets 5 weeks paid vacation every year, plus 4 weeks of sick or personal leave, all of which he can cash out for cash if he doesn't use it. Huh? Now, separate all of this leave. He gets every school holiday off with pay, and there are a lot of them, of course. Any technology he requires for the job, presumably including a smartphone or a computer, that's also the district's responsibility. So far, Dr. Jack R. Smith has gotten just about every possible perk taxpayers can bestow, short of his own private car. Oh, but wait, actually, he does get a car for free. He can use it for his personal as well as his professional business, and all expenses are paid by the generous parents of Montgomery County. So the question is, what do those parents get in return for all of this? Let's see. They get dangerous schools run by a demagogue who slanders them and then threatens to put them in jail if they complain about it. That's a deal. Courtesy of Montgomery County, Maryland. Up next, a Black Panther killed a New Jersey state trooper 40 years ago and then fled to Cuba. We'll talk to Governor Chris Christie about the hopes for bringing her to justice. 40 years ago this year, radical Black Panther Joanne Chesimard, also known as Assata Shakur, was convicted of murdering a New Jersey state trooper named Werner Forster. A few years later, she escaped from prison and fled to Cuba, where she has lived under the protection of the Castro regime ever since. The Obama administration reestablished diplomatic relations with Cuba last year, so is there any prospect that the Trump administration can bring her back from that island to justice here? New Jersey Governor Chris Christie hopes so. He joins us now. Governor, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tucker.
So I know you've been following this for many years, so you will know the answer to this. Did the Obama administration make any effort, as it was normalizing relations with Cuba, negotiating over those normalized relations, to bring this fugitive back to the United States?
None that we're aware of, Tucker. I mean, you know, I wasn't in, obviously, on the meetings that were happening in secret between the Obama administration and Cuba, but this much we know, that in cold blood, she murdered a New Jersey state police trooper, convicted 40 years ago this week, escaped from a New Jersey prison when she was being transferred, and fled to Cuba and has been protected by the Castro regime, paid by them, supported by them, and yet we normalized relations with a country that will not return someone who was rightfully convicted under our justice system of murdering a state trooper. It's outrageous, and I've been saying it's outrageous since I became governor. It is outrageous. What can be done now? Well, listen, I hope that what the Trump administration is going to do is, before we take any further steps with a relationship with Cuba, that they say, listen, first and foremost, return this fugitive from justice back to New Jersey so she can rightfully serve the rest of her term for murdering a police officer. Everyone says they support what the police do every day. They acknowledge they put their lives on the line. Well, this gentleman not only put his life on the line, he gave his life. Yes. And his family has lived for the last 40 years with the knowledge that his murderer has been living with impunity in an island protected by that government. It's outrageous. And I think, you know, this is something that Secretary of State Tillerson and others in the Trump administration should make a top priority in any dealings they have with Cuba. So you've been around government and worked in government for many, many years. Given your experience, do you think it is plausible that intelligence agencies supervised by the Obama White House surveilled Donald Trump's campaign, his staff, communications in and out of Trump Tower? There certainly doesn't seem to be any evidence of that at this point, Tucker. And, you know, I know from having spent 7 years as a U.S. attorney that the FISA court and the way that works in foreign intelligence surveillance activities, it is very, very difficult to get that type of activity going. You have to go and convince an independent judge. And as a prosecutor, it was our job to provide that information along with the Department of Justice to do it. So I don't see any evidence of that at this point in time. You know, we'll continue to listen, but I can tell you from my experience, that kind of stuff is very difficult to get. Kellyanne Conway, this Sunday on one of the shows said that she believed at some point you would be joining their administration, the Trump administration. What job would that be? I have no idea. What do you want? Well, I'm not going to negotiate with you, Tucker, unless you're an agent for the Trump administration. But the fact, and I know you're not, so we're going to have no negotiations. Listen, I made it very clear to the president that I wanted to complete my term as governor of New Jersey, and that it would be something that would have to be very, very unusual to make me leave this job early. I asked for 8 years, and absent being president myself, which did not work out, I didn't want to leave. And so will I ever go work there? I have no idea. Listen, the president has been a very good friend, dear friend of mine and Mary Pat's for the last 15 years. And so I talk to him frequently. I give him the best advice I can give him. And sometimes I just sit and we just talk about things that have nothing to do with government. And we talk about families and sports and other things. We're friends. We've been friends for a long time. So I'm always going to be there to help him. But whether I'll ever work in that in his administration or not, I don't have a crystal ball. So when was the last time you talked to him, and what advice did you give him? I talked to him a couple of nights ago, and I'm not going to tell the advice I gave him because that's the way you give advice to a president of the United States. You do it privately and quietly and just between the two of you. And I never talk about the advice I give to my friend, the president. Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey, thanks for joining us. Tucker, thanks for having me, and thank you for putting a spotlight on the Joanne Chesimard issue. It's a really important issue that all Americans should really care about. It deserves one for sure.